Okay.
There we go. Welcome to Order Militarist Radio TV. We are again with Brother Alexis Panovo. And welcome, brother.
Thank you, AJ. Always glad to be on Order Militarist Radio TV and talk about something that needs to be talked about.
About 2-3 weeks ago was the death of George Floyd. Never should have happened. Should have just put him in the car, as they did, and took him to the station, put him in holding, all the proper procedures that goes into it, fingerprints, photograph, the works. But now we have out of control revolution on the streets. It's no longer terrorism where it's just, breaking into shops, stealing, looting, arson. Now they're going after religious statues of a great, I guess you could almost say, founder of California, Blessed Juniper Serra, a Franciscan.
When I saw those images, my blood started to boil. I know I'm a Franciscan and a man of peace, but this is way too much. Blessed Juniper founded California's 13 cities or so. He was a man of great charity to the poor. He saved countless Indian tribes from starvation and disease. And they loved him as a father. And they always rejoiced when he came to visit their towns, because he knew that he would always intercede with them against the Spanish army, who was much more strict. So it's as if they just knocked down the Catholic version of Martin Luther King, okay? So you can see that these people are racists. They don't care about minorities, okay? They care about destroying people who defended minorities, okay? They just, I imagine they'll go after Martin Luther King pretty soon, because they'll say he wasn't a Marxist, because he wasn't. Martin Luther King would have condemned these people. But it's just unbelievable. It should have been put a stop to days ago. It cannot allow this kind of, it's not protests anymore. Okay, this is revolution, constant burning and destruction of cities. I saw a video yesterday of downtown Minnesota, and it's like it's been completely destroyed. It's turned into a war zone, as if Syria has come to the United States.
Yeah, if you don't believe it's now turned full-on revolution, and you don't believe that they are coming for you, see, one of the brave Fox reporters in Seattle went into the area called CHOP, and one of the ranking members of CHOP spilled the beans on why they chose the name CHOP. It comes from the French Revolution and the guillotine. That is what they want to do.
Mm-hmm. And if that was his answer, then I think you're looking at deep state operative, because the average person who sells drugs on a street corner isn't going to know anything about revolution, okay? And what we see going on in the cities now looks a lot like what the CIA did to Syria at the beginning of the Syrian war. They funded groups, they sent in operatives, they started burning down and shooting up the cities of Syria and to push a civil war to overthrow the government. And that was done because, for some reason, the people under Obama, they didn't like the Syrian government, and they were doing what Saudi Arabia and Israel wanted. They wanted to destabilize Syria. The Syrian people won that war with the help of Russia, and they defended. But hundreds of thousands, not millions, hundreds of thousands of Christians and millions of Muslims were killed, innocent people. And then all these refugees were driven to Europe to colonize Europe with even more Muslims. So I don't like what I'm seeing, and I'm extremely upset as an American citizen that Trump has not put an end to this. I'm extremely upset.
So today's topic is one the very first topic I created for this new apostolate, because I wanted to go even further, even more hard hitting than we were before when we were just on Blog Talk Radio. The left's connection to terrorism, and it has a long, dark history. It started in the French Revolution?
Yeah, the French Revolution, the reign of terror, reign of terror, was basically they couldn't push it through unless they eliminated their opponents. So the left, as you know, they want power above all things, and they want power for themselves. So they're willing to do and say anything to get that power. And when all their lies and tricks and frauds don't achieve it, then they go for the elimination of their enemies. And by elimination, I mean mass murder, okay? Prescribing people on a list and killing them. It was one of the worst aspects, the final decades of the Roman Republic before it was transformed into an empire. And it's an act of desperation. It's an act of just total barbarity. And the left did it in the French Revolution. They put tens of thousands to death, clergy and nobility, because they knew if they killed leadership, then they would have power. And I think that what's going on now is has to do with that, because we know Antifa is funded by George Soros. And we know George Soros is a good friend of Donald Trump. And Trump's not doing anything to stop this. Does he think this is going to get people to vote for him? What's the purpose of having a president if he doesn't stop nationwide insurrection? Okay. And, you can't say, oh, well, these people are upset about racism. What they're doing is racist. Never in the civil right, never in the age of slavery did gangs of people go through the street and burn down entire neighborhoods of black people and kill them. Never. Okay. Slave owners were cruel, but they weren't stupid. They didn't kill off their workforce. What these people are doing is destroying whole neighborhoods where black people live and make a living. So they're targeting blacks as much as whites, but by destroying monuments and saying outrageous things like this, they're showing that they've been given the go-ahead to take America down. They're trying to, I think, get us used to constant insurrection in the cities, so that then they can start sending out armed gangs in the countryside and killing everyone in every house. I think that's what they really want, because they don't get any political advantage from destroying the cities. The cities vote for Democrats, okay? So if they destroy Democratic voters, they're certainly not going to win. So that maybe that is George Soros' objective, to destroy Democratic voting blocs. And then maybe that's why Trump's allowing to go it on. But if they are revolutionaries, they're going to come to Republican neighborhoods and start killing people. Because right now, as far as I've heard, there's only maybe a couple dozen people who've been killed in the whole country. So they're really just making a show of it and gearing themselves up to bloodlust. But I think when the killing comes, it's going to be Republicans, because they have to break up Republican voting districts so that they can seize political power. And once they have political power, then they'll use the army to do it. And that's why the army's not opposed to them now. And that's why the army is allowing them to go ahead and do it now, because when the army does fire a shot, it's going to get against white Christian citizens. And I think that's the reality of the deep state right now, because they don't show themselves to be that which would prove me to be wrong in my assessment, then they are what they are.
There was talk when all this corona started, and there's talk again about an October surprise. And when I hear October surprise, I think back to the October Revolution, the Tsarist Russia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Tsar was heavy-handed. His government was corrupt. The people were upset. They had been protesting 20 years. And so when the revolution broke out, it wasn't Marxist, it wasn't communist, it was Republican. And people thought, okay, now we're going to set up a government that is going to represent the people. But then the Marxists saw their moment to strike. Okay, they massed their forces. They attacked military installations. They took the guns, and then they decided to eliminate all the other leftist groups who didn't want violent revolution, and who the leaders, that is. Then they massed all the leftist forces, and they went out to kill everyone, and they started massacring people in the street. The Marxists of Russia killed 60 million people in a country that didn't even have a half of the population of the United States. So they killed maybe a third of the population over 70 years or so. And don't think for a moment that the left in this country, whether they pretend to be Republicans or not Republicans, don't want to do the same thing. Because I think the businessmen are somehow behind it. They don't like these high salaries. They want low salaries. So they want chaos. They want revolution. And then because they moved all their production overseas for places like China and stuff, they don't care if Americans get killed. So, because otherwise they'd be doing something about this, okay? You know, a billionaire who would be opposed to this, he could hire all the security guys in a state, from every security company, every retired policeman, and he could hire them overnight. Just call up the company and say, I want them hired. And he could put 10,000 men on the street in any city at any moment to stop this rioting if he wanted to. And I'm sure many mayors would say, go ahead, we need the help, but they don't. So why do they don't? They either have no love for America, or they're part of they somehow want revolution. And this is absolutely intolerable. Governors should have called out martial law and stopped this sort of thing. And every one of these people need to be arrested, even if you have to make a big detention camp and put them in it, because this is just intolerable behavior. You can't let this kind of stuff to go on. And it is not rational behavior. It's not justified. It's not free speech, okay? Floyd may have overdosed. Maybe he was killed by some police officers. That's no reason to burn the country down, okay? There's some other agenda behind it, and there's another hand controlling it. And I just do not like that Trump has allowed this to go on. I mean, what's the purpose of you being a president if you don't stop something like this? You're useless. You're useless.
Yeah. I printed some of the articles or reports off that were on the show page, and one is from the Town Hall website. Antifa, AntiAmericanism, the left, and the Democrat Party. Let's see here. They're talking about, let's see, on the August 28, 2017, when, again, they're talking about the peaceful right-wing demonstrators in Berkeley during that time. And Antifa got called out to beat them up and disrupt the peaceful people.
Yeah, Antifa appears on the American scene under the Obama administration. He didn't do anything against them. Now Trump doesn't appear to be doing anything against them. So I think we can draw the conclusion that both the Republican and the Democratic Party are controlled by the same people who are promoting the Antifa. Because otherwise, they do something about it. And we do know that Antifa is funded by George Soros, and George Soros invested $160 million in the Trump Tower there in Chicago. So I think the dots are all connected. I know people want to believe that Trump is protecting us from the left, that he's protecting us against the deep state, that he's really in favor of America. But as our Lord says, you judge a person not by his words, but by his deeds, okay? And for a president not to prevent insurrection, mayhem, mass destruction of businessmen's property, the neighborhoods of the poor, that's very, very, very grave and very serious. The sad thing is the election's coming up and there's no one to vote for, really, because Biden would allow it to go forward, even worse. Okay, so it's a cleverly articulated political theater to guarantee that the average American is not going to be protected anymore by his federal government. I think we have to admit that the federal government is either a criminal organization or it is absolutely ineffective to do anything except to punish innocent people. Okay. I hate to say it. I love America. I don't think I'd ever say those words 5 years ago, but it's absolutely intolerable that Trump's not doing anything about it. It's absolutely intolerable that the governors are not calling out the National Guard and stopping it where it should be stopped. Create police-free zones is basically saying we're going to let mayhem run. And why does the left allowed to practice mayhem? Okay. Why is it the left? You know, if Antifa were the KKK and they went into a town and started burning down black neighborhoods, you would have 5 divisions of the US military there. Okay. So why is it, and to allow black people to do what white people do, to allow black people to do that which if white people did, they would be immediately punished, but not immediately punish black minorities that do this, that's racism. It's the worst kind of what we have been called for the last 40 years, reverse racism. And it's a Marxist trick. As soon as they say, oh, you're racist, they put you in a psychological position that, oh, now I can be a racist against you and you can't call it out because I've already labeled you as a racist. It's a trick. So you don't own a gun, go and buy one. I think it's at that point. We at Order Militaris wanted to, 4 years ago, start a training camp for average citizens who learned how to work in groups and defend themselves because we said, you know, terrorism could break out. No one listened to us. So now terrorism has broken out and the lives of tens of millions of people are under real threat. Don't be surprised that the election doesn't go the way you think, because all these mail-in ballots with all this chaos, who knows signs these things and where they come from. So stop thinking of, I have my constitutional rights. This will never happen. And start thinking, I better believe in Jesus Christ and the Bible and start taking measures to defend myself. Don't trust anyone else, okay? Unless you have some really honest police and sheriffs in your part of the country. Knock may come on your door one day and they drag you away. The whole lockdown, I think, for this fake pandemic, the virus exists, the pandemic never exists. What just has whet the appetite of these megalomaniac, pathological politicians. They said, well, the people are willing to believe us in that big fat lie. Let's just grab everything we can now. So I hate to say it, but I think we've seen the end of the American Republic. And the common American needs to organize with other common Americans and start preparing to establish the second American Republic and take back power for the people, because this political class is completely immoral and psychopathic. And they want to make us all slaves and destroy us.
Yeah. Let's see here. All the big lefties. Let's see here. Let's see. The Rockefellers, Soros, Gates, and the Bilderberger Group. Are they behind this, and who are they?
I'd say they're definitely behind this. If you look at the Rockefellers Plan from 2010, this section called Lockstep, they talk about creating a fake pandemic. After that, they talk about social unrest and promoting social unrest so that they can justify a complete police state. Okay. So let me make a comparison. I'm an anthropologist by my university training. When the Roman Empire, when it came to the end of the Roman Empire with so many barbarian invasions, there was lots of instability. The race of the Romans was pretty much extinct. They weren't, Italy wasn't levying legionnaires anymore. No one wanted to serve in the army. There was just too much chaos. And a volcano erupted in Indonesia and put so much dust in the atmosphere of the Northern Hemisphere that for 5 years in Europe, you could barely grow anything. There was mass starvation. There was winter 10 months of the year. All chaos broke out. It took a place around 527, 532. The only way to survive was by the law of the sword and the law of the claw. So millions died of starvation. And the others who had no way to get food, had to basically sell themselves into slavery to the landed nobility. And what we see coming out of the Great Famine of 527, 534 is the foundations of feudalism. After that, you are tied to the land. Your duty is to produce food for the Lord. He takes in all the harvest or a good portion of it. And if it comes time for starvation or famine or anything like that, you have to get some grain from him and become more indebted to him. So it was a terrible crisis, and people descended to the lowest common motivations, most basic nation. And the powerful people responded by the use of absolute military force and enslavement of the whole population. So I think we're in an analogous situation in the modern world. The wealthy have realized they can only get so wealthy legally. Okay. You can maybe amass 100 billion, 200 billion, maybe 600 billion, but you're never going to amass the wealth of a nation. You would have to amass 60 trillion. Okay. They can never get that wealth unless they change the rules of the game. And I think what we're seeing here is they're out to change the rules of the game. They want to enslave all of us without calling it slavery. They want to make us cattle on their ranch without calling us cattle and without calling it a ranch. They want to take away all our human liberty and all our ability for free speech and anything whatsoever that would resist their will for power. They've seen these, they're the ones that funded all these sci-fi movies of the future where a few elite control everyone and enslave everyone. They funded those films. Why? That's what they want, okay? They make you think, oh, you're resisting. In the future, they will rebel about the corrupt order. They're laughing. They're building that future. That's the future they want. And you're watching movie screens, you're playing video games, and they're enslaving you. So I think that's what they're out for. They're that psychopath. One of the problems we have in the modern world is that we allow immoral people to become wealthy. In Christian times, when the Catholic faith ruled Western Europe, if you were immoral, you wouldn't even become a nobleman. You wouldn't be elected. You wouldn't be consecrated king. The people wouldn't back you. Because the most stupid thing that you can do is give power to someone who is immoral. That's what the Germans did. They gave power to Adolf Hitler, and he killed 20 million of them. He killed half the population of Germany and another 40, 30 million people in Europe. So we've been hit for 50, 100 years. Oh, you shouldn't discriminate against non-Christians. You can't have a form of government where only Christians have power. You have to allow everyone to be elected to office. And that's just the voice of Satan, because that's saying you have to let psychopaths get elected to office and not true believers. So America's founded on that error, and America's going to be, we see now America being taken down by that error. And so if you ever have a chance to vote again, vote for a believing Christian, not a fake, okay? Okay? I hate to say it, but by Trump shutting down America and now allowing these rights to go forward, he showed that he is a complete fake. I don't give a care how many times he kneels before a statue of John Paul II and prays. I don't care if his wife appears in a picture of the Blessed Virgin Mary. If you allow innocent shopkeepers to have their buildings destroyed, innocent people to be killed, and riots to go on for days and days, you're a fake. What use are you as a president? You're of no use at all. Because of your friend, George Soros, you're going to let one innocent American citizen die because of your friend, George Soros? You're a godless piece of trash, okay? I'm going to say it. You're a godless piece of trash. And people have to realize that both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party are ruled by godless pieces of trash. And they don't deserve the vote of any Christian, okay? Not at least.
And to go with that, with this question, there are some tablets in Georgia. What are they, and why are they connected to all this?
Tablets in Georgia? I haven't heard about that. Tell me, what is it?
I think it's funded by the Bilderberg Group. Those.
Oh, those monuments in Georgia. Okay, yeah, those huge tablets. You mean like in the biblical sense? Yeah. Well, that was built in the '80s by this strange kind of a figure, and on those monuments, they basically pledged to reduce world population down to 1 billion. So that means they want to kill 6 billion people, and they never been taken down. And I think now it's a state park. So this shows you how immoral people are. So the depths of immorality go deep in America. It's the Masonic Lodge, we have to admit. It's the Freemasons, who were founded by two groups, one of Protestants, one of Jews, to destroy the Catholic faith. But their long is to revive paganism and with all the wickedness of the adoration of Lucifer. And they also out for the destroying of Protestant churches. They've destroyed the morality of almost every Protestant church already. And they're in the process of destroying the morality of the Catholic Church. I think you can see that Bergoglio is a Freemason. His own head of intelligence in Argentina admitted that in an intercepted phone call that they were both Freemasons. And that's what they're up to. It's for honest, simple Christian person, it's hard to imagine there's anyone who would want to kill 6 billion people. It's hard to imagine that someone would say every day, let's make America great again, and let riots go on because his friend is sponsoring them, okay? And make it appear like the riots are being done by the left. The Republican and Democratic Party are the left. Trump appointed Gorsuch, and Gorsuch just ruled in the Supreme Court that you can go to jail if you fire one of your employees because one day he comes in wearing a dress, okay? Which would destroy your customers. They wouldn't come to your store if they saw something like that. So now you'll go to prison because you're not going to destroy your business and push their political agenda. That's the left. You can't get more left than that, okay? So that ruling in the Supreme Court has made, in my opinion, the federal government completely unjust. You have no obligation to pay them taxes anymore, serve in their military, or obey any of their laws. You have to get your state to immediately pass a law nullifying the decision of the Supreme Court on the grounds of the 10th Amendment. You immediately have to do that. Otherwise, you're allowing the federal government to become an instrument of Marxist revolution that is going to prevent anyone of having any rights. They're going to go persecute you if you don't agree with your politics. They're doing the same thing in Italy. They want to pass a law that will force you to work for 3 years without pay in an organization that promotes LGBTQ if you so much as even get accused of being hateful to someone of their ilk. And the person who accuses you doesn't have to pay any legal expenses. The government will pay all his legal expenses, but you have to pay all your legal expenses to defend yourself. And if you're found guilty, you lose your license, your passport, your identity cards. That means you can't work and travel or anything. You'll be confined to your house within certain hours of the day because, you know, if you went out at night, and you'll be forced to work 3 years without pay in one of their organizations. I mean, that is Marxist tyranny, okay? And the Italians, if they don't wake up to it, Italy's going to fall to Marxist tyranny this summer, and there won't be democracy after that. But on top of it, if you're found guilty, you can never endorse a political candidate for the rest of your life, and you can never run for office again. So it's the perfect law. As soon as the next parliamentary elections come, if they ever come, someone in the crowd will say, you're hateful. And then immediately you'll be found guilty and you can't run for office. It's the perfect political trick. And so if it's not stopped, but the party that's controlling Italian government has 53%, and the Italian government 53% vote is enough to pass a law, it's the end of democracy in Italy. Italy's democracy, they saw how much power they could grab in the lockdown. Now they're going for all. And I think you're going to see that in America shortly, because either Trump will do what they want, or they'll assassinate him, and Biden will do what they want. And at least in America, though, we have federal states that are sovereign. So if the country falls, your state can survive, but you need to mobilize politically and make, for example, in Kansas, do not vote for anyone that's from the East. Vote for someone who is a native-born, Bible-believing Kansan who will defend Kansas and loves Kansas and doesn't give a care about what they think in New York City, okay? Because otherwise, your country, your state's going to be screwed up. And I think in your lockdown, you saw that, didn't you? We have someone there from the East.
Yeah, our governor. She's from New York City.
Mm-hmm. So she's come from the East to colonize Kansas and to make you slaves. Yeah, if you can remove her by legal procedure, you need to vote her right out of office. Okay. Otherwise, your life is in danger with maniacs like that. Okay.
Yeah.
People from the East are maniacs. They're just. I know. I've lived in the East my whole life, and I've never voted because I know they're all maniacs. There's just no one to vote for. And if you try to vote, as soon as any decent Bible-believing Christian tries to run for office in the East, every week he gets 3 or 4 phone calls threatening him with murder. And if you go to the police will say, oh, it's just free speech. You know, you're running for office. You have to be willing to endure that. But if a Democrat gets a phone call from someone saying, I want to kill you, immediately the entire police force is mobilized. They find out who it is and they arrest him and he goes to jail. So you can see it's that's what the East is like. Don't let that come to the Midwest, because once that happens, you're just living in a prison. It's just a matter of time for them to arrest you because they've already declared that you're a criminal.
Yeah. I think some of the next targets of these revolutionaries are, they want the Washington Monument. That big old sucker.
Yeah, let them try to tear that down. It's built of solid stone, but you know, maybe they'll burn it, you know, by getting inside and pouring gasoline in the whole stairway or something like that. But you know.
Yeah, it's just getting crazy. What else should we talk about on this topic?
I would say, you know, you got to realize that self-defense is your own personal responsibility. Fathers of a family, it's your duty to defend your family. I'm not saying become a radical or someone who lives in a bunker, but you should have in your home the things necessary in times of emergency. You should have a full medical kit. You should have a couple weeks of canned, stored, or dried foods, if you can afford these things. I now know the economy is so bad, not everyone can. You should connect with good, honest people you know in your own town, you've known them for life, and you should monitor what's going on in your town, in your politics, and if you don't own a gun, you should legally acquire a gun and learn how to use it. If you have adult sons, you should train them to use it. And if you have adult daughters, train them to use it, and your wife too. So if you need to, okay, I'm not saying, you know, become vigilantes, but liberty is hanging by a very thin thread. And when the national government is corrupted and collapses, all chaos breaks out and everyone has to learn to defend themselves. So I'm a big, Ordo Militaris is not a militia, but I'm a big advocate of the English tradition of having every town have its own militia. And if you have a Bible-believing Christian government in your town and it's still sane, you should go this week to town government and say, pass a resolution authorizing the levying of a town militia. And let's organize the men in town, the vets, even the women who are vets, into groups and begin courses of training. You could use the police shooting ground. And just as a provision that if mayhem breaks out, you can call up a force of a couple hundred, a couple thousand in a matter of hours and be ready to respond. Because the National Guard is not going to be called to defend you. The U.S. military is not going to come to defend you, because these are all controlled by the federal government, which is now controlled by the left, okay? So they're either not going to act, or when they do act, it's not going to be in your favor. And having a local militia is the best thing a town can do to defend itself. Every town in Western Europe for more than 1,000 years built their own walls, had their own militia, and defended themselves. That's how civilization went forward. So it's not going to cost the town anything because it's completely volunteer. You probably have several thousand people in every town that already have their own guns, and you certainly have a lot of military vets. So organize it. It's just a matter of volunteers, and I think right now you get a strong reaction. And if one town does it and it becomes public, it will spread rapidly to all the sane states. And that will save America, okay, without breaking any laws. Because when the left realizes there's like 100 million militia ready to march, they're going to back down. They're going to stop with their annex because they'll know that they're the ones who'll get massacred, okay? But it has to be done. Don't wait for the National Guard. Don't wait for the state police. Go to your town government in the same little towns where they're still sane and say, pass a resolution and authorize the levying of a volunteer militia, in the sense of you allow it to take place. Let the people by their own, because it's a First Amendment right. If you have the right to bear arms, so for the sake of a well-trained militia, then you also have a right to form a well-trained militia. It's a constitutional right. And you're not a vigilante force because you're only going to be called up if the mayor needs it. So, and you're not for conquering other towns, you're for defending your own town. So it's perfectly legal, perfectly legit. Everyone already has the guns. There's already people highly trained in your neighborhood, in your town and neighborhood. You know how to do it. You just have to decide that when all hell breaks loose, we have to defend our town. Okay. So that would be my advice. And that's the peaceful way to respond to the threats, because you have to prepare. If you don't prepare, the left's going to come for you. Okay, and the left will do everything to convince you not to prepare, but you need to prepare.
Yeah, I don't know if I should share this. I won't share his name, but a local guy from a town nearby who's in the regular army, who was a recruiter, who was recruiting me and helping me get all ready to go to West Point for all this illness hit.
Mm-hmm.
He told me, I have his card somewhere, but I don't know if his number's still good. And he's in the actual regular army. He's like, if you need anything, call me.
Yeah, there's a lot of good men who've been in the army or are in the army. And if any of them are listening to us, you have to realize that your promise to uphold the Constitution is not a promise to the president. It's not even a promise to your commanding officer. It's a promise to the American people. And if your chain of command is corrupted by people who want to destroy America, you have to realize that there could be a time of necessity where the rank and file have to arrest their own commander because he is a traitor to America. Because someone who's going to allow the people to be massacred, or someone who's going to order the massacre of the people, is a traitor of America and needs to be arrested under the Articles of Military Conduct, and I forget the exact name of it, and replaced with someone who's going to defend the people. Because your loyalty is to the people. It's not to the federal government.
Yeah. So that was something I have never forgotten. Like, oh
Good man.
boy,
Good man.
I don't know, like, what would he bring?
Yeah.
So, if you know anyone like that, and he's a local guy but in the regular army, I think he was even Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the faith too.
Yeah,
So,
if your town is going to have elections for mayor soon, and you have this view of defending the American people, run for office and save your city. Because as mayor or on city councilor, you can advocate these measures to be implemented so that your town doesn't get targeted by the left. And it's very easy. It's not going to cost you any money. You just have to make a public resolution like, we consent to the formation. It's not like you're authorizing it, we consent to it, because people already have the right to do it. And if the feds try to come in and harass people, don't give them even the time of day, okay? And don't cooperate with them against the people. So it can be done. It just takes a will to do it, okay? And I can tell you, you're going to be harassed for doing it, because the deep state already controls the whole federal government. I get phone calls from secret agents pretending to be honest citizens all the time, giving me one spiel another and trying to pump me for information because, you know, a Franciscan monk who doesn't even have a gun, he's the threat. It's not the people burning down America. It's that Franciscan monk with a flag of Lepanto behind his shoulder. He is the threat, you know. That's the level of the deep state, okay? You know, and I've talked to at least 5 government agents this spring alone because they think I'm a threat because I tell the people to defend themselves. So yeah, so that's why you need to run for office in your own town, and you need people like that in your own town government. You cannot trust the West. One thing about the deep state, its influence is very limited. So they control things hierarchically from the top down, okay? Whereas the people are many and they control things from the bottom up. So there are a lot more than us. There's 100 of us for every one of them. And you need to connect with like-minded people. And you need to trust your average your common citizen. But, you know, when it comes to important decisions, make sure that guy's never worked for the CIA, the FBI. And even if he's worked for the military, you're better with a sergeant than with your commanding officer, because most of the commanding officers were brainwashed at West Point. So, because you want to make sure that you've been infiltrated and you're not being controlled by the deep state. So when you hear voices saying, oh, we shouldn't do that, oh, we shouldn't do that, oh, we should wait for this, oh, no. You should organize your defense. You have a right to organize your defense. You have the right to bear arms in America. At least there's that hope in America. They don't have that in Italy. There's no right to bear arms in Italy. So Italy has like no way to resist when the revolution comes, other than the grace of God and their prayers on their knees. But in America, in addition to the grace of God and the prayers on knees, you have the right to bear arms. So, and the right to organize a local militia. So you should do that. The states can authorize it, and the towns can authorize it. And you actually don't need authorization. You could form clubs to do it. But it's good if you run for political office in your own town so that you can ensure that there is a political government to back you and that the police won't be used against
Yeah. One thing I like about Switzerland, they make it mandatory for every citizen to take training and to own a military rifle.
Mm-hmm. They used to, even when you got out of the military, allow you to take your rifle home with you. Now they don't do that anymore because there were a few crazy shooters. But yeah, Switzerland has maintained its independence because they're well armed to the teeth. I think they have an army bigger than Italy. They're a tiny little country. And then they have all kinds of like secret underground galleries and fortifications and stuff. So they're dug in. And that's the way you preserve your liberty, by showing others that you're strong, okay? And the left right now is attacking undefended shops and undefended statues because that's an act of cowardice. To really organize and start doing something takes, you know, a bit more brains. So, and a lot more parts of the body that, as a friar, I won't mention. So, you know.
Last night on Fox News, Tucker Carlson tonight, he had on a shop owner from Charleston, South Carolina. And that city is this massive, beautiful, Catholic. And even when that Dylan Ruth shot up that Southern church, nothing happened. Another murder happened. Nothing like this had ever happened. But those outside forces came to town. The police in the city issued 11 p.m. curfew. This restaurant owner, was on his way home because it was time for him to go home. And it was time for the nighttime shift, which included his son. And he had cameras that would play at home inside his restaurant so you could see what's going on. So it was on the radio when he was on his way home, like 11 p.m. curfew. He called up the dispatch office, like, what's that mean? Do I have to go back and close up shop and get all of our people out? And they're like, we don't really know because The city didn't tell him. Then when he got home, he's like, "What's at the windows of the restaurant? Is that a brick?" And all of a sudden, all hell broke loose, and the staff was trying to get the restaurateur, the eaters, into the back room where there's be safety. And my son dove on one of the people having a meal, protected him, shielded him, got him back into the back room. And they were first. It was one of the wait staff calling 911. No one came. Then it was his son who called. No one came. And it was finally his dad watching on the monitors back at home in the office. "Where are the police? No one's coming. Why the hell aren't the police doing their job?" And so on and so forth. And the dispatch lady like, "Oh, please be calm, sir. Please be calm. I got patrols out there. They're doing their job. They're doing their job." "Like hell they are. I'm watching it on my monitors." Just call them. Just let them have it. And there's hundreds of 911 calls going out that night in Charleston.
Whatever
One
happened?
was from.
Wait, you left me hanging. Whatever happened to the people in the restaurant?
I think they got out the back way.
Yeah. So I get the impression there that the mayor just totally messed up how you should police a town. If you're expecting riots, yes, you have police out to monitor the situation, but you need to keep in several parts of the city in strategic places, large groups of forces that are highly mobile and can immediately arrive on a scene. You don't spread everyone around the city so that you can't respond to anything. I mean, that's just stupid. And so, if you're in a large city and you haven't thought about things like that, you need to get some ex-military on board and devise a strategy for how to police the city during insurrection. It's different than how to police it from crime. But the fact that these protests have spread from Minnesota around the world shows you that the left is behind it. Because the people that sell crack on the street corner in a city in America don't have friends in Paris to organize a protest. It's just not the way it works. No, it's the left. They even had protests here in Rome, though they were not violent. So that's who's behind these things. You have to open your eyes, and that's who's promoting it, and that's who's getting your government to not do anything about it. It's the left. It's united, coordinated effort. I'm not just talking about the journalists in the mainstream media. I'm not talking about only Democrats. It's the deep state. It's all these organizations working together. Freemasons are all working together because they want to bring down our civilization. They want a radical change in the modern world where the average citizen becomes their slave, and you're no longer allowed to live like a Christian.
Yeah. My dad just commented on how to repel the people who were doing what they did in Charleston. Guns.
Yeah, if you had store owners should have the right to bear guns, because a few shots in the air will scare away cowards, and so shop owners should know how to do that. But they did. I'm really in admiration on how the staff responded. I guess they had been prepared, and that is a very good way. Save your clientele first. That's the first thing. But if there's mayhem in your town, you should have one of your employees stand on the front sidewalk with a shotgun, and you're not going to have any brick throwers come anywhere near your place. Okay, they're going to see you. So maybe even deputized. So a show of force is always the best thing in neighborhood. But since this is being organized internationally, the police need to watch who's coming into town, whether they're coming in on buses or cars, where these leftist activists are coming. They're connecting with leftists on the ground, and they're organizing these things in advance. the state police should immediately start investigating all bus companies, okay, because they're the way they're transporting these people around, and look for ties to organized crime, because there has to be a lot of organized crime involved. You just can't get all these people coming to town for nothing. So there are ways to prevent this stuff from spreading around, but people have to open their eyes and do something about it. If a governor isn't stopping all the buses in the state, because why lock down the whole state for a pandemic that never existed, but not order a decree saying any buses entering our state must first go through like a customs check with the state police who's on board. And if he sees they're activists, turn that bus right back around and say, not in our state, you're not. And it's a very easy way to avoid a lot of violence, a lot of crime, and the deaths of a lot of citizens just by controlling the buses. Because you know the buses aren't going to come in on a side road, they're on the state highway. So set up roadblocks and a checkpoint, right? Or have a helicopter in the air when you see a bus, send some police cars to track it down and pull it over. You know, those are very easy.
Yeah. And that part about the curfew, the police didn't know how to tell the restaurant owner what he was supposed to do.
Yeah. So it's not sufficient for a mayor just to declare a curfew. The head of the police should say, Your Honor, you know, if you're going to declare a curfew, you have to say what it means, when it begins, who's exempt, who's not exempt, how to conduct yourself before and after, what things you want shut down, what things you don't. You really want to shut down all the gas stations? You know, people, how about someone who needs gas? How about the hospitals? How about the ambulances? So it has to be done intelligently. You just can't say, I'm declaring a curfew. I mean, so you probably have a lot of military vets in town, a lot of even police vets. You can form a committee and they can give you a plan in 24 hours, I'm sure. Just don't declare a curfew. And if you don't know how to declare a curfew, what are you doing as mayor? The town should already have a plan. Okay. You know, that's something easy to formulate in peace times, but it's absolutely necessary now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I was listening to that, I was like, if it's legal in your state or in your city that you can have guns in your store or your restaurant, I would have, you know, there's these specialized armory things you build into the wall, and you just have a little special card that you yourself can only just hold up to the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and the wall opens up.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. And also, I don't know if it could be actually done. Like how in the Titanic they had those watertight doors.
That's certainly possible because and they already have doors like that for the refrigerator rooms, because one of the big security problems in restaurants is people stealing food from the fridges. But if this guy had cameras in all his parts of his restaurant, he probably could afford such a thing. But also, you don't have to use live rounds. You could use, you know, non-lethal kind of rounds that give a good sting in the butt, or a nice, you know, hot, piercing kind of pain. So there's ways to do it, and this is one of the things that the left is always attacking. They don't want anyone to use arms, because why have they been against ownership of guns these last 50 years? They've been planning for today. That's why.
Yeah.
They want their forces armed. They don't want your forces armed.
Yep. So let's recap all what we've talked about.
Yeah, okay. So the left ideologically is all about terrorism. It's all about political control, and it's all about doing it no matter what. And they've proved themselves times and times again since the French Revolution that when they can't get their way by legal, democratic, or normal means, they will destroy the businesses of their opposition. They will destroy the persons and institutions of the opposition, and they will mass murder people, especially the leadership of the opposition. They have no qualms about that because they're a psychopathic ideological cult. So what we're seeing now is in the United States is merely a very light form of Marxism. It will get a lot worse if nothing is done. Stomp it out. Okay. Not only do you have to stop these riots, you have to find who was involved and arrest them all and put them in prison or deport them. Unfortunately, in America, we don't have the crime of you can deport someone if he's a citizen, but it has to be stomped out. It has to be rooted out, or it's going to come back and get worse. These people have tasted blood, and they want mayhem.
Yeah. Is there a way to shut down these leftists? I mean, these powerful leftists, the political left, so that they can never do this again.
You have to get down on your knees and repent and turn back to Jesus Christ. Because why does the left have power in America? Because they said, oh, you vote for us and we'll allow this immoral practice or that immoral practice or that vice or this one. And they have weaned a large part of America, around 50% of America, to support them. Now, half of America doesn't want Marxist revolution and never exterminate it, but they want abortion, they want contraception, they want homosexuality, they want all kinds of immorality, and the left promised it to them, and they sold their souls to the left. So now the left has power, and they're entrenched in the political system. The only way is to vote for good Christian candidates and start a new party. I don't think Republicans and the Democrats are going to save you. I think they're just controlled now by the left. And you need a Christian party that is Bible believing. You have to start small in your own town, but that's what you need. And you need to replace these people. Anyone who has any connection to the left or anyone who thinks that the response that's been so far is sufficient needs out. And you need to put in people who are willing to defend the people of your city with force of arms, when and if necessary, and not pay any attention to the federal government or even the state government if they're not willing to do those things. So that's how to save America. It begins with personal repentance, belief in Christ, and it expresses itself in a political party that's based on that faith in Christ and the love of the people, because that's true. That's what truly America is about. It's not about the left. It's not about these Eastern political parties that are just completely screwed up morally and ideologically, and just totally corrupt individuals that will say one thing and do the opposite.
That would be a great topic for another show. and this has been a great show on the left and their connection to terrorism. And I want to thank Brother Alexis Bonello from Rome coming on once again.
Thank you, AJ. I'm always glad to be on Ordo Militaris Radio, and though I'm currently living outside the United States, I love U.S., and I'm glad, at least in this way, to show my patriotism in this hour of crisis.
Yep. This has been Ordo Militaris Radio TV, signing off. Deus Vult.
Deus Vult.